We are here. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today to talk about standing out when small, smart brand moves for Canadian service-based businesses. Yes, let us talk about that today, darlings, right? I think that is fabulous. And I'm joined today by the amazing, super awesome possum, Caroline Wakefield.
Hello.
Hello. Oh, thank you so much for being here. I know it takes a couple of minutes for folks to settle in. I thought it'd be really cool people to know, though, because we're on LinkedIn and because Caroline and I have been doing some really fun things together. Do you folk know that we didn't actually know each other not even a month ago?
Isn't that
And in
amazing?
fact, we started having all these voicemail DMs conversations back and forth about this topic, became buds, and decided to do this LinkedIn. So that's just a little nugget for everybody. That magic does happen in the LinkedIn DMs here. And so if there's someone you have a professional crush on, like I did, then reach out because you'll probably start sending all these frivolous little pieces back and
And
forth.
sometimes the crush works both ways, right? You never know
Absolutely.
until you get in the DMs and connect, and magic can happen. So very exciting.
Yay! I see
Yeah.
Audrey's arrived too. Hello, Audrey. Thank you so much for joining. I think what we'll do is, these are 30 minutes now, nice and short and punchy and impactful. So we're not going to dally too much on this. If you have any questions in that, but I think one thing as we're getting people in here, where are you calling in from and what's your favorite snack? What's your favorite snack, Carolyn?
So I am, and I think you are too. So again, we have so many things in common, but I am usually my go-to is salty. So chips. Yeah, chips
Yes.
are my thing. And I think my top chip is like salt and vinegar. But yeah, but there's a whole variety, like I used to work in a place where do you remember when I think it was Lay's did the whole contest about different flavors and you could vote on them and stuff like that? So we tried everything from, I don't know, like poutine flavored to like steak and potatoes, and we tried a whole bunch, which was a fun, this was pre-COVID, but but it was a fun office snack pile to go to. And but yeah, I still think salt and vinegar is my top. Yeah.
Especially with cream cheese. That's my special treat. Like salt vinegar
Ooh,
chips dipped in cream cheese. Just
I had not tried that. Yeah, my
mm.
go-to with it sometimes is an apple. An apple with a salt and vinegar. I don't know why, but like I
Oh,
feel like it just goes so well together.
well, that's great. Yeah, anytime like your tongue's about to peel, you like soothe it with some like apple sweetness, and then yeah. Mm.
Exactly. Also, it reduces the guilt on like, you know what? I'll have some chips, but I'm having an apple.
True. True. I appreciate that. Awesome. Well, darlings, let us know where you're calling in from. We have some Twizzler gummies. Oh, talk about next level. And you see, snacking on cucumbers. Oh, Wendy, I'm always into those as well. I love it. Snacks, darlings. This is Marketing Snacks, and we're here to give you some snacks today. And so I would love to hear a little intro then. Caroline, tell us all about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Caroline Wakefield, and I help founders make smart business moves by using data they already have or finding hidden opportunities that they didn't even know existed. So I don't know if you know this about me, Alison, but I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. My parents had a retail furniture store in Richmond, BC, for those of you in British Columbia. So I know what it's like to chase those big dreams, to pull all-nighters, and kind of feel that pressure to figure it all out. And so that just really drove me to make it my mission to take the kind of tools that big companies use, like even Fortune 500s and stuff like that, and really make them work for the everyday entrepreneur, kind of no matter what stage you're at, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I've got experience doing this across a variety of industries at CTRS Market Intelligence. And so that's where I work with entrepreneurs and kind of do it for them. I've worked across like skincare, vertical farming, even dinosaur bones. And what I've learned is the insights you need to grow your business are actually a lot closer than you think. And so that's why I love doing that with founders as part of Aspire Academy Hub. So I really believe that together we can figure out the data you have and how to use it to your advantage.
Oh, awesome. Yes. And I think that's just the key. We're often sitting on gold, right?
Yes,
It's having someone to help us sort it, lift it up, put it under the water, rub off the dirt, maybe love the dirt more than the gold. Who knows,
yeah,
right? But it's often there. We just need some help unearthing it, panning for it, and putting it through. Awesome. Thank you so much. And for the folk who might not know who this face is again, when you work with two people, you bring in two audiences. Hello, I'm Alison Kay, and I help B2B businesses put good into the world, to put more good in the world by getting the visibility they deserve. Especially what you do is highly complex, innovative, or maybe sensitive in nature, right? So you're doing incredible work. Your beautiful little brains and wonderful brains in terms of science or impact or social enterprise, but it can be hard sometimes to get folk to really understand what we're all about. And I help with that. And I can't believe this is my job. And today I figured, based on the conversations that Caroline and I have been having, we wanted to dig in a little bit about this. This obviously came up at a pointed edge with the tariffs work and also the shifts that are happening with our neighbors down in the South. And we got really passionate in our conversations about understanding an urge to say we are too small, the problems are too big, and where are we to sit inside this space? But we strongly believe that there are ways to do this in a way that feels great from your brand perspective, keeps you in the sight line of your ecosystem. And we want to help you folk out here today. If you're a team of 2, if you're a team of 10, if your budget's been slashed, if you're just trying to tap into other local and national, international networks, we thought today we'd give you some of our pieces for that. So so I definitely do appreciate everyone's time on that. So the first topic that we would like to have is, this is what I can think is it's an honest question. Is it distasteful to promote in uncertain times? Because darlings, they're never going to stop. There will always be these unprecedented times. So I was really curious your take on this, Caroline.
Yeah, so it's an interesting question because I actually had a friend who shared with me ad sort of promotional material that she saw from a company that had products, and they were sort of saying, like, we're not sure what's happening. Tariffs are going to impact us. We think prices will go up. And essentially it was like a buy now. And she was like, what do you think about this? And to me, that borders on the edge of a little bit distasteful. Like, there was no clarity about, well, like, how much do you think it might go up? I know there's a lot of uncertainty with, the tariffs, but there was no sort of transparency. And I think that's one of the number one rules I would say is it's not necessarily distasteful to promote, and it depends how you do it. So I think, like, keeping key things in mind. So one I would say is transparency around, we think like it's this, I don't know, mineral in our skin cream that comes from somewhere else. And because of the tariffs, we think this is going to go up more than 50% by the calculations we've done, something like that. And then show what's in it for the customer. So it's not distasteful. Especially, it feels less promotional when you're saying, but we really want this mineral because it comes from, someplace, and it's got special things that are really good for your skin. And we're really committed to that quality for you. And that's why we don't want to change sort of our ingredients. I think if you can sort of show what you're providing to customers and why it's either better for them or how it's going to impact them, the more that you can say, I think it sort of tones down that distasteful aspect of it. I think you're just being honest and open, and you can still say prices are going up, but just how you do it, I think, makes a difference.
Could you reframe that back into service-based? So I love the example with the mineral, but could you give us just very, very briefly an example of how that might apply to service-based pricing? Not pricing so much, but maybe we're talking more about what they deliver isn't something that fits into a box, right? It could be a methodology or that. How might that translate in that example?
Absolutely. So I think, like, if there are aspects of what you provide that you rely on, it could be the tools you use, there's so many apps and things like that. If there's something that's going up, if you have vendors that you work with, I think that there's opportunity there to, get as much clarity as you can for how your pricing might be impacted. And, it could also even be, if you're service-based, it could even be the people. Like, there might be a reason why the cost of your it may not be goods, but your services are going up. So again, same rules would apply. Absolutely. I was using product because that was the example my friend gave me, but it certainly applies to service-based too, of just being clear and transparent about, okay, here's here's what we think is going to happen, how it might impact pricing or timing of delivery, things like that can be affected too. So whatever those situations are, I think, again, just being clear with your customers, and again, showing the value. You know what, we use this tool because it helps us do it faster for you, which makes it costs less for you. If we didn't have the tool, it might take 5 times as long. We don't want that delay for your business. So yes, the cost might go up, but it's not as bad as if we didn't have the tool. That kind of thing. I think that kind of transparency, whatever you can say, can really help sort of the customer understand where you're coming from, but what's in it for them.
Oh, wonderful. Yes. And I think what I'd like to add to this is if we take out the word promotion for a minute and get thinking about, again, that visibility that we have in our ecosystem. So is it distasteful to promote in uncertain times? I would say you're doing your ecosystem a disfavor if you go silent during tough times. I think there's so many other ways in your marketing that you can be visible and to remind folk of what you're doing. So I think about associations that you align yourself with, or articles that help, or even putting together just touching base, right, with your ecosystem. So sometimes, of course, in marketing, often it's not about what we're selling or what we're offering, and it's about how we fit in their ecosystem. So if there's anyone on the fence about how they can continue to be visible, you don't have to be talking necessarily about what you offer, but more how you fit into this topic right now, because we need this visibility. I understand it might feel easier to remain quiet and see what everyone else is doing, but we can't do that. If I do hear sometimes from founders that, we hear other brands saying X, Y, and Z, I go, where are you? Where are you folks showing up in this time? And what are your lens? What's your queer lens? What's your First Nation lens? What's your East Coast lens, West Coast lens, right? So if you don't feel like you want to talk about what you are doing in terms of a sales dev, then there's opportunity, I think, to still show up in time, right? So you have these with the two, so how you handle it from her. And for what I'm talking about, darlings, I think there's lots to work with. My wish is we don't want you to be quiet, because it's hard for people, if they're in this moment, they're not going to be remembering you for being quiet. They're going to remember you for when you were available, right? Honestly, would be
I think also, Alison, a really great example is with AI. And I feel like sometimes it feels like the elephant in the room, where people think or customers think the service you provide might not be necessary because they can just do it with AI. And if you wholeheartedly disagree, say so. I think that's the most important thing. And I think sometimes maybe it can feel like, oh, I'm too afraid to say anything, or I don't want to enter into that. But I think like the point you made about visibility is so important. So
yes. Yeah. Absolutely. So, darlings, again, we want to be cognizant of the time here. So I would love for us to move on to our next question, which is, how can you show your Canadian-ness when you don't have physical labels on what you're selling? You're not sitting in shelves. You're not at maybe trade shows or expo centers, right? So, Caroline, I would love to hear your insights on how can we show our Canadian-ness when we don't have physical things to put out on spaces for people to find on their own.
Yeah. So I will acknowledge, it probably feels a bit more challenging because it seems really easy to slap that maple leaf on a product and like, boom, there you go. But with service-based, I would say start out by just saying, tell your Canadian story and use all the channels you have available, whether it's, customer interactions and feedback. A simple thing is in your signature. Like, is there something you want to put in there? You can put a maple leaf in there if you wanted to, or whatever is right for your brand. And so update your story, your bio, your profile. There's lots of channels where people might be reading about you, learning about you. And so tell your Canadian story. It's part of the reason why I say I'm very proud that I have an entrepreneurial family and we had a business in Richmond, BC, right? So things like that, you can definitely control that narrative a little bit so people are aware. And I think the other aspect too, that it feels very Canadian, but I'm going to say it because I think it's very values aligned with a lot of businesses that I work with, which is, you want to give a little. So are there things that you're doing to support Canadian businesses and show that on your channels, in your story? If you worked with Alison to do your marketing for the services you provide, like, tell that story. Isn't that amazing? I mean, there are lots of things that you can do to promote others and help others. And in turn, that kind of reflects on you. And going back to the promotion in the first question, it's like, it's a way of promoting that doesn't feel too salesy or, kind of icky. It's just telling your genuine story.
Oh, I love it so much. I mean, most of what we're doing is storytelling anyways, right? With these soft little moments that connect back to what we're offering so that we can put food on the table and, participate in the circular economy for sure. And some of this stuff is simple too, right? Like, are there Canadian iconography and photography on your website? The CIRA has a wonderful stock resource that is of Indigenous and First Nation folk, for example, going through and looking for and paying for stock photography that actually shows your location, shooting your own location. And again, like to your point, like the spelling, I think and from an SEO perspective as well, it's okay to touch in and say, as a Canadian consultancy, as a Canadian manufacturer, as a space based in there. And I remember in some of these conversations I had with other folk on LinkedIn, some folk are like, well, we're both a Canadian and American company. So where do we stand on this Canadian-ness? And that's through the beauty of specific landing pages and showing maps that show where you are an international company. So I think this always comes back to, is it very obvious to people immediately that where you are located, this is important to you, but you take it for granted based on the spelling or your Google business profile, for example. So there's all these many different kinds of ways. It's more about stopping, to your point, and being like, what's the story here? And are we being really overt about, not overt like over the top, but like, is it evident or do we have to go digging? So great question, great answer there. And let me see here. I'm just checking through on some of these questions as we go through. Having a little quick boo here. Yeah, interacting, supporting other local Canadian businesses. The best way to position yourself as a Canadian business. Absolutely. That's the key piece inside of there. Let me see here. So we've kind of talked about this broadly, but we understand that you're a small team. You've got tiny budgets. You've got a lot of capacity to try to fill. So we put our heads together and thought about just a couple of items that you could action literally after this LinkedIn Live, whenever you read it. And also if there are any questions, pop them here in the chat. So let me see here. So we want to talk a little bit about two things that you watching us right now in this recording or live can do right now, not next week, not next month, not next quarter, not when you get to it, but put some action towards where your heart is. As a small service-based business in uncertain times, to create and keep that momentum. Caroline, what do you have for us?
Yeah, so I am biased because I love looking at the data and analyzing the data and all the things. So one way that I think sometimes, the founders that I work with, they don't necessarily realize where they have data. And I would say one place to start is listen to your customers. I have a background in communications. I believe wholeheartedly about listening as much as telling and storytelling and things like that. So listen to your customers. There's data in every question that you get asked when you're jumping on, business development calls and all those virtual coffees. And, my little hack, I guess, that I love to share is just like leverage AI if you can. Like if you have transcripts of those calls, get AI to tell you what are the most common questions that you're being asked. So look for that. Look for the DMs. I mean, it was the magic in how we came together and started to get to where we are today, to have this wonderful live with everyone here. And so, so pick up the phone. If you don't have any of those right now, I would say one thing you could do after this call, think about your best customer and pick up the phone, talk to them, just say, hey, how's it going? I mean, how much do you think that would impress them? First of all, like that goes a long way. And so I think that's a way that you can make progress to hear, kind of keep your ear to the ground, of finger on the pulse, what is happening, what's going on. And that will guide you to know where the mind of your customers is kind of at right now, to know like, oh, should I amp up my Canadian-ness? Like, is this something that is really impacting my customers and top of mind for them? Or is it sort of like, meh, they don't care so much, based on, and that might be true too, depending on your business and the services you provide. So, but keeping that, using that data, so to speak, in all these different avenues. I think there's lots of avenues there, but, the big umbrella I would say is, listening to your customers.
And I promise I did not plant her to say that, but the folk who know me, I am always harping about audience research and customer research, right? Because again, your information is under your nose, darlings. And I always invite too, if you feel resistance about picking up the phone, You can start with an email to move over to a Zoom or phone call, but I think, you know, when we position it the right way, it's not bothering people. They probably would love. They're less likely to tell you in a social post. They're not going to dump their hearts into a comment. They might do it in DMs, but they probably aren't. So these are touchy topics that need one-to-one hearts. And again, you're right. You don't know where it will go from there. And again, maybe all this is for naught. Maybe they're like, we're fine. And actually our industry is thriving, or we know what you do, or this is agnostic to what we have to encounter. But you don't know. So you could sit here stuck assuming that this is going on, or you could talk to the lovelies that have already raised up your brand and find out what's going on. So thank you for that. It's so true. Like, just do it, darlings. Like, the worst thing is they're going to tell you later and call you back in a couple of days. That's really the worst case of it. And so I love that you've gone inward, right? So their ideal and their clientele. And then I love for folk to go outward. So you can call them your contemporaries or your competitors, whatever feels right for you in your space. But it's never been easier. It takes time. If it doesn't cost you money, darlings, it costs you time. But it is very, very easy to look at anyone else in your ecosystem and see what they're doing. And most of them, even if they're not that great on socials, maybe you were seeing that they were recently at an event. Maybe they're sponsoring something. Maybe they're talking about a topic in a way that might at least spark you. But if we stay stuck with only what we know or we believe, you're missing a whole conversation of you, again, inside this ecosystem that your B2B service-based company is in. So again, we're all doing our best to be as frequent as possible. But like, this is the beauty of the internet. You can go back through their socials for a whole year. You might find an event coming up or a topic, right? So again, I would much rather, I know Caroline feels the same way, we would much rather pause and research before we put work out there, because that's busy work, darlings. If you feel like you win because you made the Canva thing, because you helped yourself write something or helped it with AI, that's not actually where we succeed in those relationships and storytelling. It's, where did it come from? Where is this central? What's actually happening? It can save you a ton of time too. Again, if you feel like your wheels are spinning, see what everyone else is doing. Someone is a little less unstuck than you, and you got to go up there and have a look. So we're both saying two things you can do is research, darlings. It could be, Caroline, from your perspective, people with a busy work week, what would you say for them if they next week wanted to do this? How much time could they realistically eke out just to give this a whirl?
You know what? I think if you just want to get started, even if you spent like 10 minutes on every Monday or whatever it is, if you could do 10 minutes a day, that'd be amazing. But it's sort of like exercise. You got to start with a little bit. First, get the running shoes on or whatever it is. So even if it was 10 minutes once a week, you're probably already doing things where you can find the data, but maybe you just need to keep that top of mind. So for example, if you're on a social channel or you're looking at your website stats or, things like that, there's data in that and it's telling you things, and so are they spending time on a certain page on your website, or are there certain comments, or what are the conversations? I mean, it's kind of how we got going on this conversation, Alison. We asked each other, what are you seeing? Because we were having conversations with other people. So we were already having those conversations, and it's just turning your mind to, oh, right, there's some data here. And if I just, be mindful of it and think about how I can apply it, I think it can start as simply as that. I don't want to overwhelm anyone. I certainly work on projects where I've spent literally hundreds of hours on a single project, which of course takes, it can take a few months, but yeah, you can start small, and it can be something that, if you have a small team, that's not too onerous to get maybe one person on your team to kind of turn their attention to, and just start checking what you're hearing, what you're seeing, what comments are being said, what reviews. Competitor reviews are a great place to look. When I swear for my audience, I didn't tell Alison to look outside, in that external point of view too, but I say that all the time as well. So yeah, looking outside can be really helpful to know what to do kind of in the company.
Oh, no, I love it. Again, easy for us to say, right, as the marketing nerds, but we see how it bears fruit for clients all the time, right? And again, most times other folk have already figured this out or have tried it, and you can have a little outside glimpse and see how well it performed compared to 25 years ago, where unless you were at that conference, you had no idea how things went, right? It's all there. It's just, creating that muscle, I think. Perhaps if you're a founder with a very small team, maybe I also offer up, is there something that your team is doing now that they would rather not do, that they would like to replace that 10 minutes with? So is that doing hashtag research when maybe you have no evidence to prove that those hashtags are actually moving the needle on your social platforms? Maybe delegate that instead to someone doing a little bit of research. I mean, that's an example that kind of popped into my head there. But there could be, you're allowed in your business founders to, you know what, we're actually putting this down now because we're going to go through a season of research, and we're going to pause some of our production work and some of our outward posting work to do the research to further us in the cycle down the road. So when marketers tell you to do something, I always advocate, well, what can you put down and put that in there? Like, we're not making your plate bigger. If you want mashed potatoes and peas, now you want corn. Take out the peas, take out the mashed potatoes, and have the corn for a while. That could be one way to work with that. So let me see
And I
here.
think
Yeah.
just to add to that, Alison, I think it's a really great perspective on sort of thinking about what is going to get you the best ROI, right? And so with your question, I love that, because it's like, you know what? Peas aren't serving me anymore. Like this, is this really? And sometimes we need to take that moment to work on the business, not just in the business, and just take that pause of, do I really want peas now? I've had it for a week straight. Like maybe I should switch up my diet a little bit, or whatever the case may be, right? So bit of a silly example, but I think if there's a 10-minute task that a team member of yours is doing that, maybe you've been doing it for a while and it just sort of becomes the habit, it's good to sort of pause, reflect, is that serving us? Let's see if we can get better ROI on those 10 minutes doing a little bit of research. And with all my experience of working with different founders and things like that, I know how powerful it really can be. Like, I would really encourage everyone just to try it out for a little while and see what you can get out of it. And I'm confident that you'll find certain decisions come a little bit easier because you know more, or how to tell your Canadian story might come from some of the conversations you have with customers. So yeah, I just thought I'd add that. Look for the ROI.
And darlings, for a lot of you, it is co-op student and intern time. And I can't think of a better way to show the future of your ecosystem, what it's like to be by tasking them for some of this research. So they get to understand the relationship of your brand in the ecosystem while also just deepening their knowledge. And they have fresh eyes. They are not as attached to your friggin' brand as you are, and they may offer you some wonderful things in that space. So that's one of the things when I work with clients and they have folk who are in for a little while, I say, I think research and seeing out there, and I think those fresh eyes can bring such a powerful value. So darlings, I'm looking through here, I'm seeing lots of echoings of this is fantastic, and we are so happy for that. But of course, you all know this is LinkedIn Live, and both of us are available for DMs. And again, we're keeping this to 30 minutes today, so I thought I'd give Caroline a moment to talk a little bit about Aspire Academy Hub, and then darlings, we're going to send you back onto your workday because your time is valuable, and we just love that you were here to chat on and on about being more effective as a small, mighty Canadian team.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alison. I appreciate that. I'm very excited. The work that I do with Aspire Academy Hub is helping entrepreneurs and really walking that path with you to see what you can leverage in your business and how you can find data or use data to really get, ROI that I was talking about earlier. So I'm very excited to announce that I will be launching my online course in June. So stay tuned for that. If you could go to the URL that's at the bottom of the screen if you want to get on the wait list now. And I can also work with you, if you're not sort of in the space of being able to do the course. I'm happy to connect with you and just have conversations. And, sometimes people are sort of like, no, I don't have any data. And I will challenge that. If you want me to help, look in all the couch cushions to see where your data is hiding, I'm happy to do that. So would love just to have conversations with you. As you can tell, Alison and I really had a great conversation, and that just fuels me and inspires me. And I'm so supportive of all the entrepreneurs who are on this call, watching the recording, and out there doing what you do, because it is hard work. It is hard work. And so thank you for doing what you do. And if I can play a small part in that journey, I'm more than happy to. So would love to connect.
Ditto. I don't know what else to, darling, you took that out of the water and sailed it across the sky and out into the stratosphere. Darlings, you've got this. You are not alone in any of this. Your team has so much strength. And if you don't know, reach out, ask. There are so many other incredible Canadian service providers that can help you with your Canadian service provisioning. So, darlings, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much for tuning into this month's LinkedIn Live. Hang out with us in the DMs. And, darlings, I hope you have a wonderful spring. May everything bloom in your business as it has been around your garden and walkways. Darlings, mwah, thank you so much for your time today.
This was so fun. Thanks.